We'll wait, just hold on just a minute then.
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
It
Keith
wasn't
Dias, are you
working.
present?
It wasn't working before. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. Keith Dias, are you present?
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. And Frank, you're present.
Yes.
Attorney Markman
Yes.
and Holly Hughes present. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Item number 4, it's a voluntary public, roll call, and we always appreciate it when interested, parties be able to listen, take part in the meeting right there. And if the president would like to identify themselves, we'd appreciate it.
Mr. Dino, Palmdale Water District.
Welcome.
White Fence Farm 3, Jack Cephas.
Welcome, Jack.
Thank you.
Hi, George. John Joyce, Roseman News.
Hey, John, it's always a pleasure.
George, John Yucas,
Hey,
AV
John.
Group.
Great. We appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to public comments. If anybody would like to address the board, has any comments regarding any items, now's the time to do so. And items that are agendized, we can talk about that when we get to them. But if there's anything that's not on the agenda, please feel welcome. Okay, moving on to item number 6A, adoption of an agenda and board order 6A1. So, is motion to be in order?
Mr. President, this is Rob. I move we adopt the agenda.
Director Paris?
This is Director Miller on the second.
Director Miller, thank you. If there's no further discussion, can't say we got to have a roll call. Okay.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. We'll move on to item number 7, consent calendar. And we've got a few items in the consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of April 11th. Then we have some resolutions regarding the sanitation district, which really can't do much about it. So that's been happening for years. So if everybody's okay with that, there's no questions. Motion would be in order.
Mr. President, I will. This is Director Miller. I'll move on the consent calendar.
This Director Donato, second it.
Director Miller and Director Donato. If there's no further discussion, we'll have a roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. That'll bring us down to item number 8, the Finance Committee. And Director Donato is chairman of that.
Yeah. Okay. So we reviewed last Thursday all the items are in front of you. So let's start with 8A1. Consider impossible action to accept and file the check registry list April 27th through May 10th. And our general manager, Matt Newsom, will go over some of the items.
All right. Thank you, Director Donato. Good evening, board. So in your board packet on page 74 is the beginning of the checklist that we review every twice a month with the Finance Committee, and then it's accepted by the board. Routine items for this period of April 27th through May 10th. One item that's out of the norm is item 64 on the 4th page of the checklist. And this is a payment to WM Lyles. If you remember at the last board meeting, John Bozigan, our operations manager, gave a presentation on the emergency repair of the north feeder. So this is the final payment to WM Lyles for that work. It's just over $146,000. Everything else is pretty routine, and With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'll
Oh,
move
we
on.
are-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead, Frank.
I was gonna move on board order 8A1 that we approve, the checks registry.
I'll second the motion. This is Keith.
A motion by Director Donato, second by Director Dias. If there's no further questions from the board, all in favor, well, I gotta get over that. Okay, roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes,
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you.
okay, item 8A2, this consideration of possible action to accept and file the treasurer's report for the month ending of April 30th. Matt's gonna give another overview on this as well.
Thank you, Director Donato. And I'm going to turn this over to Teresa Yates, our finance manager. The report starts on page 82 of your board packet.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, directors. This is the treasurer's report for April 30th. Just the normal items that we look at: average yield to maturity for the total portfolio at the end of April, 2.950%, which was up 0.248% from the prior month. Average days to maturity for the total portfolio, 270 days, or approximately 9 months. And total cash and investments at April 30th for the total portfolio, $129.2 million, which was down $34.6 million from the prior month. And as you recall, we redeemed the 2008 A2 variable rate COPs. So that's the reason for that significant decrease. The redemption date was May 1st, and therefore the funds were transferred at the very end of April to make that payment. It wasn't a decrease of $45 million. We did receive about $11.5 million in property tax revenue in April. So that's why the decrease was only the $34 million. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You want to touch on the property tax difference, Teresa?
Yeah.
On page 96 of your board packet, there's a little summary of showing this year's tax payments versus last period.
So we, at the finance committee meeting, we always look at the property tax year to date in December and April, since that's when we received the majority of our property tax revenue. So for the fiscal year to date amount for April 30th, 2023 was $36.5 million, compared to April 30th, 2022, it was $32.8 million. So in total, the agency's property tax revenue has increased about 11% from the prior year. And if we compare that to what we budgeted for 22-23, we budgeted a total of $36 million. So we're already exceeding what we budgeted by $588,000 this year. So,
and just a reminder, all the property tax revenue that the agency receives goes towards the fixed costs associated with the State Water Project. So these funds are not used to offset water rate. So.
yes.
Is there any questions from the board?
I'd like to make this, Director Donato, I'd like to make a comment. I would foresee 23, 24 assessment, tax assessment to be pretty much the same for next year. So that's, I think we discussed that in finance too.
You know, the finance committee looked at our investments, very close, and everything looks pretty dang good. We're not like some of the banks that are upside, down. We're in a good position. So, a good job, I think. I hate to see that, like some of the financial institutions.
Absolutely.
So we've been very conservative, and maybe we didn't get the top dollar, but we haven't lost. So.
Right.
So if there's no further questions, the motion would be in order.
Okay, where am I here? Yeah, I move on. Order 8.2, consider possible action to accept and file the treasury's report.
Okay, motion by Director Donato, and a second by
Director Miller, second.
Director Miller. If there's no further questions, Madam Secretary, we could have a roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes,
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried.
conclude
Yeah,
the
thank you.
report.
Thank you. Yep. Brings us down to item number B, the Planning Committee. And Director Parrish is chairman of that. I'll turn that over to Director Parrish.
Yes, we're going to have a report on the SCADA system, and I would do it, but I don't know all the words, so Justin's going to do it for us.
All right. Thank you, Director Paris. Good evening, President Lane and members of the board. The Planning Committee met on the 12th and went through a fairly lengthy presentation on the next two action items. We've pared it down a little bit tonight for the board, but feel free to ask any questions as we go along the way, and we can provide some clarifying information. There is a staff report as well on this item included in the board packet, starting on page 97. So we're talking about SCADA. Could be a bit of an unfamiliar term to those not in an automation industry. So I thought I'd just start with some kind of information on what that is. SCADA is an acronym. It stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. It's a system of hardware and software elements that allow utilities or other process industries to control processes locally or at remote locations, gather and process data in real time, interact with devices such as sensors, valves, pumps, motors, record that information into a log file, allow you to look at trends over time, and also, maybe most importantly, alerting operators to abnormal functions within your facility. So in our case, in the water industry, if a pump goes out that's feeding chlorine into the system, and there's a potential safety issue, that would be alerted to the operators right away so that they could respond and look into what that abnormality might be. It allows us to adjust chemical dosages, start and stop different operations within our treatment plants, and look at trends over time of how our treatment operation is performing. So it's really a vital component of our operation and really allowing us to do what we do in the water industry. So moving into what we're doing today, a few years back, we kind of started down this process of looking at a potential new SCADA software to implement agency-wide. Our current SCADA system was developed and installed by a gentleman named Jeff Adler out of Automation Services located in Colorado. And Mr. Adler has been working on behalf of Avek, really as an extension of Avek's staff for all of our SCADA-related needs, any troubleshooting or programming that needs to be required, or any kind of maintenance on our SCADA system since 1995. So he's been working with us for quite some time, and he's served us very well. His program has served us very well over that time. However, with most folks, I've been working somewhere since 1995. He's getting somewhat close to retirement, and his system is really a single engineer supported system. He's the only person that understands it, that he designed it, developed it from scratch, and implemented it here. And once he goes on to retirement, then we really won't have any support for our software going forward.
Did he used to work for a larger firm at one point?
I'm not aware. John, do you happen to know?
Yeah, he worked with PIF.
PIF, okay.
Yeah, I remember the conversation you relayed. I remember that it was kind of a one-person firm.
Right, yeah. So there's some concerns over that, going forward with our operation, making sure that it's supported and will work for us in the long term. And so the board directed us to start looking towards a a non-proprietary, kind of widely available SCADA system. There's many available on the market, and directed staff to start going down that process of finding the one that best fits Avek's individual needs. That work started in 2019. The board awarded a contract to Jeff Adler of Automation Services to replace what are known as programmable logic controllers, or PLCs. And these are devices that kind of translate information between a human interface and a device within the treatment facility. So you push a button or click a mouse on your computer screen, that signal gets translated through a PLC and some programming to increase chemical dosage or stop a pump or start a pump, et cetera. So they're a vital component of the SCADA system overall. So that work was needed to be done to make sure that those PLCs are compatible with whatever future SCADA system we choose to go with into the future. So that work was completed in 2019. The phase 2 of our project to move forward with the SCADA replacement started in 2021. The board awarded a contract to Black & Veatch, a large engineering firm with a lot of SCADA experts, engineers on staff, to start the process of evaluating all the many SCADA software packages that are on the market and honing in on the one that's most appropriate for Avek individually. And that process was a very lengthy process. That's what we spent the majority of the time at the committee level going through. I'm going to touch on each of the aspects of that, but a little bit more briefly than we did at the committee level. At the bottom, there's kind of 4 phases of this. We're in phase 2 right now. Once we've selected a new SCADA system, and then what's known as the integrator, which is the team of programming and engineering professionals who come in and install that SCADA software and program that to meet all of your needs, and they're known as integrators. So once we've selected the software and the integrator, then we move on to designing and implementing the first facility with the new SCADA software package before moving on to the remaining facilities. And the idea behind that is that we get some lessons learned as we implement that first representative facility, and then we can take that information as we move forward to the remaining facilities and hopefully make that process a little bit smoother as we go forward. So, as I mentioned, we're in phase 2 right now, which is the selection of the new SCADA system and the integrator. These steps were presented previously when we selected Black & Veatch, and the board awarded a contract for them to move forward, but we'll refresh everyone's memory, being that it's been a couple years. The process that Black & Veatch was hired to go through is this kind of 8-step process. Number 1, review our current system operation. That way they have a good handle on how we operate our system. In certain ways, it's probably different from other utilities. In certain ways, it might be the same. So they need to get a grasp on what that looks like. Then they review how our operation fits within current industry best practices, discuss advantages and disadvantages of that. Look at all the required functions of our operations, as well as some things that might be nice to have or optional. And so from that information, they came and they did a couple site visits. A gentleman named Jacques Brados from Black & Veatch came out here with Jeff Adler, and he walked around, took him to all of our treatment facilities, showed him how we work, so he could really learn the ins and outs of our system. And once doing that, they worked together to develop functional requirements document. So that document kind of memorializes all of the functions that are required, all of the things that they determine in steps 1 through 3. And that document served as a basis for evaluation of the SCADA systems that they looked at going forward. So then they moved into step 5 here, which is to identify and evaluate the leading software packages available and commonly used in the water industry. They had a list of 19 different SCADA systems that they started with. 6 of those were kind of dismissed right off the bat because they lacked some core functionality that Avek needs. So 13 of those SCADA systems were moved on to a more detailed evaluation of their capabilities in relation to what Avek needs. What they did was they created a custom questionnaire that they went through and answered those questions for each of these software packages and came up with a score. So based on that scoring, 2 of the of the 13 packages were clearly the top two choices that would meet all of our needs now and into the future. So once they had those two SCADA software packages identified, they asked those vendors to provide evaluation copies so that they could actually go into the programs, create kind of demo versions of that, and see if it really does all of the things that Avek needs it to do. So Jacques Brados with Black & Veatch evaluated one of them, and Jeff Adler, Avek's longtime consultant, evaluated the other for a period of time, and then they flip-flopped, and each of them evaluated the other. So they both had some good hands-on experience with each of the two software packages that were under consideration. After that, they looked at cost estimates, including the initial capital and the ongoing maintenance and licensing fees. And then they looked at some other things, kind of intangible, maybe not quite intangible things, but some other things that may be important in selection of a SCADA package. So this slide kind of summarizes what I sort of just went through. They evaluated the question, or scored the two softwares based on their Avek specific kind of custom questionnaire that they created. There were 36 questions that they evaluated each SCADA software against. The pricing evaluation that they went through, the third bullet point on your list here, shows the two select systems that best met Avek's needs were known as VT SCADA and Ignition by Inductive Automation. So from a pricing standpoint, VT SCADA was about $140,000 of initial purchase, and then about $18,000 of ongoing annual costs. Ignition, a little bit cheaper, about $111,000 initial purchase price, and about $15,000 of annual ongoing costs. And then the evaluation versions, as I mentioned, both of those performed well. They both confirmed the capabilities of each against Avek's needs. And then those kind of additional factors that they looked at the ease of programming. VT SCADA had a bit of an edge out of the box on programming, but it lacked some of the customizability that might be needed going into the future as things change or Avek's operation changes. Then they looked at that customizability. Ignition, they found to also be very easy to program initially, but it has significant programming capabilities that would allow us to customize that long-term into the future should anything change. Finally, they looked at the location of each headquarters as well as their support base. So those integrators that I mentioned that would come in and install this software, they would also be our long-term support. So we could have a team of professionals supporting our new SCADA system instead of just one person. VT SCADA is located in Canada, and Ignition is located in Northern California. So with that, as you might expect, VT SCADA's support base integrators are not West Coast based. They're more of an East Coast based company. They've only got 3 certified integrators in the Los Angeles area, whereas Ignition, being Northern California based, they've got 47 certified integrators in the Los Angeles area. So a little bit of a larger support base to pull from for Avek going forward, should we choose that one. So I'm just going to summarize some of that stuff here, and then I'll pause for questions. But based on that evaluation, this is a slide I stole from a presentation that Black & Veatch gave to Avek staff last month. And the initial screening, that's the custom questionnaire that they created. VT SCADA slightly outperformed Ignition just on a scoring basis. On the cost analysis side, as we just talked through, Ignition has the edge there, being a little bit cheaper, both on the initial cost as well as the ongoing costs. The evaluation of both softwares, they performed equally well. So it's kind of a draw. And then those additional considerations of the support base, that's probably a big one for us, being that we don't have any on-staff SCADA folks. So Ignition really has the edge on there. So taking all of that into consideration, the recommendation from the consultants as well as staff having gone through all of the reports and things that Black and Veatch produced, and talking with our representative from Black and Veatch, as well as Jeff Adler, who we know and trust for the last 30 years or so. The recommendation from both staff and the consultant would be to go with ignition. And I know I went through that fast. As I mentioned, the committee spent about an hour going through this. So I'll take a second to pause and see if anyone has any questions on the process that we went through in the evaluation of the various SCADA software packages.
I have a question. This is Director Miller. What is the expectation for the length of time this is going to be working for us?
I mean, this company, I've had an opportunity to talk with some folks that have been using it since 2007, and they say it just keeps getting better and better. They're keeping up with the industry standards and the best practices within the industry. So, I would anticipate this would last us a very long time before needing to ever change.
That's a very long time.
Oh gosh, I don't know. We've been using
10 years,
this for
years.
30 years, so I would say 30, 40 plus years, I'm sure.
What's the expectation of ignition being the recommended entity of staying afloat in order to work on the software and reprogram?
I think there's a good chance of that. I've got some slides regarding ignition or automation as a company, if we want to move forward into those slides real quick. But they're a widely used company. Some Fortune 100 companies use them. They've been around. They've got right now about 21 million in annual revenue, but they're growing. They started in 2003, and they've been growing rapidly ever since. So everybody that I've talked to within the industry expects them to be around as a company committed to their product for life. It's worked really well for us. It allows us to keep, for our security policies, allows us to keep everything separated from our regular business network. It's working out really well for us. So we envision doing that going forward.
And expansion, like for the High Desert Water Bank or other areas, we would just expand servers.
Yeah, we would just build new, what they call HMI screens, human machine interface screens. You would build those at your various facilities, install the computer towers and put the software on them, and you should be good to go. Yeah. And as we work through the process of installing this at all of our various facilities, we'll have a template. One of the requirements of the integrator, if we move on to that step after this, would be to come up with that preliminary design and then detailed design document. And then that would be able to be rolled out to various facilities. And we would have that documented to make an easy installation for our future facilities as well.
Did you consider the additional expansion in this price, or that's just for what we have right now?
It's just for the exact same setup that we have today. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Justin, the staff would still have to do work. Is that correct? This is not just out the door. We would still have to do some programming or in-house.
Well, we wouldn't do it in-house. The next action item, should we get past the selection of the SCADA software package tonight, the next action item would be to go out for a request for qualifications to hire that outside SCADA support to come in and install this system. Yeah, and there would be a maintenance package associated with that going on. That was part of the cost evaluation, was that ongoing cost.
The one fellow that we're using now from Colorado, he comes here occasionally, does he or not?
He does, yeah. Yeah, he's got a lot of remote capabilities nowadays, so he's able to troubleshoot and fix certain things remotely, which has really helped, obviously, keep his costs down. And that's pretty much industry standard practice nowadays. But he does come out for, I don't know, quarterly or something, maybe, roughly? 3 times. Yeah, about 3 times a year.
That was a very good presentation. You gave a lot of alternatives, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that Jeff Adler that's from?
Yeah.
How long is he going to stay with us?
Have you heard any inklings?
I think at least for the next 5 years.
There you go. John's saying at least the next 5 years that he'll be around. But he's committed to helping us through this process as an extension of Avek staff, and is fully on board with the transition that we're going through. He was, vital in the analysis and evaluation selection.
I remember this discussion you had, but we had a difficult time getting somebody at one time, and that's why he was chosen.
For my time.
Remember, you know, John, where your office is, that was going to be the computer room right there. And it was going to be mainframe computers and.
Yeah, we have artist rendition, what it was going to look like.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Lost its face.
So if we've got just a couple additional quick slides here, but just to give everybody a little more information on who Ignition is as a company, you can see some familiar logos on the screen. These are all companies who use Ignition. As I mentioned, it's not just a water utility type software. It's any kind of automation or process software. So some large names shown here. Got one. I think I have one more slide. There we go. Oops. And we've talked about some of this. You know, they founded in 2003, got over 300 customers worldwide, got some installations in Canada, Mexico, Australia even. There's a handful, there's like 46 water industry installations. 18 of those are in California, and about half of those are in Southern or Central California. There's some names on the screen here that you might recognize. LADWP, Pasadena Water Power, Western Municipal. Helix Water District in San Diego, I had an opportunity to talk with that gentleman, and they were an early adopter of this software, and he couldn't say enough good things about him or about them and their support and their process of upgrading and keeping up with the current times. The committee asked us to speak a little bit about security. They use all the latest security protocols. I'm not super familiar with all of them, but TLS 1.3 is the most secure right now. And that's the one that's trusted by most of the major financial institutions to encrypt and make sure their data is safe and protected. So industry standards, above and beyond for all the security protocols. And so overall, they look like a very strong, healthy, reliable company. And we feel comfortable, and so do our consultants, recommending to the board the selection of Ignition as the agency's future SCADA software package. So that would be the recommendation tonight from the planning committee and staff, would be to authorize the future procurement of Ignition for our SCADA. I will mention that the term there, future procurement, we're not quite ready to buy that software today. We do need to get those integrators on board, and there's a little bit of legwork to get something set up. No sense in purchasing the software now before we can actually utilize it. So we will wait and purchase that software when the time is right. But we have a sense for what that's going to cost, and just doesn't make sense to purchase that right now before we can actually use it. And be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hey, is there any questions from the board, staff?
Well, I think that's a good idea to wait until they was thoroughly updated.
Yeah.
Mr. President, the consensus of the committee was that we go ahead with the purchase of the Ignition. So I think we're done with discussion. So I'll move approval of Board Order 8B1.
Director Parrish, we have a motion by it. Second?
I'll second.
Director Van Dam? If there's no further questions, Madam Secretary, we could have a roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion, good job.
All right. Thank you.
And an 8B2, we're going to skip that at this time?
No, we're going to talk about 8B2 now.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
I'll let Justin do this presentation. You did so good on the first one.
All right. Yeah, I'll stick around here. Thank you. So this follows on the selection of a SCADA package. And we mentioned during that discussion that we would need support from a system integrator. And as I mentioned, those are the team of programming and engineering professionals who are well-versed in this particular software and would come in and design how that is actually going to be programmed and work in with Avek's system. So included in your board packet on page 101 is a staff report for this item as well. And this is following on the selection of the SCADA system, Black & Veatch, part of their contract after the evaluation was to develop an RFQ, a request for qualifications, to competitively solicit the SCADA software integrators. So they've developed that RFQ. It's included within the board packet, and that's ready to be released out to the public to begin getting these qualification solicitations in. Once we have those proposals, we would evaluate them. Black & Veatch can help with that evaluation. We have a provision to conduct interviews if necessary. If we have a few well-qualified firms that apply, it probably makes sense to go ahead and conduct interviews to make sure that they're a good fit. And then ultimately come back to the board with a recommendation to select the integrator that we'd be comfortable moving forward with. So just some information on how the RFQ is structured and how we envision the contracting to work with the integrator. Very similar to what we did with the High Desert Water Bank for the construction management services and really the design services as well. Is we envision the RFQ process to produce selection of a firm that would engage in a master contract with the agency. And that master contract would outline kind of general scope and responsibilities of the integrator, but it would also establish key personnel that we would lock into that contract with us, so we know we're working with the folks that were included within the proposal, and they're not going to swap somebody out after they, get awarded a contract. It'll also set rates. So for each of those personnel who are going to be working on the project, we would have established rates as well as maximum annual rate increases. So we would lock them into those increases. The RFQ right now does have a maximum escalator of 3% per year. So they would be locked into rate increases which would not exceed that 3%. And we have seen in the past on these, consultants don't always take that liberty. Some of them do hold their prices, steady to be a little bit more competitive. So we'll just have to see what we get. But we thought that was important to provide some, stability and foresight so we can plan going forward. So after that master contract is executed, we envision multiple phases of implementation of the SCADA software. As I mentioned, we would start with one facility and before rolling that out to multiple facilities. And we envision those different tasks occurring via task order. So we would develop a scope of work. On the screen here, you see phase 1, task 1, phase 1, task 2, et cetera. That first one, they would develop a scope of work for that. The integrator would propose on that scope of work, set, with their fee. That could be negotiated individually with that integrator. And then once we settle on, acceptable fee, we would come back to the committee and board to authorize that task order. And then we kind of proceed in that way as we go forward through the implementation of the SCADA system across the remaining facilities. So as I mentioned, it's very similar to what we have going at the High Desert Water Bank with the CM work. We engaged KJ in a master contract, and then each of their different projects that they're doing CM on is individually task order authorized by the board. So that's kind of how we envision this going. And that might really be it. Yeah, that's kind of the process. I'd be happy to answer any questions about how we envision this going. But the recommendation from the planning committee and staff at this time would be to authorize the release of that RFQ and begin receiving proposals from the system integrators to begin evaluating. Be happy to answer any questions.
What's it cost a year?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the staff report has a little bit more detail on the costs that we anticipate for this project. The SCADA software package itself, I think, was about $111,000 for the initial purchase, and then I remember $15,000 or so ongoing. That's just for the software component. We have built into the financial plan and the rate study and budget, the capital budget, $3 million to implement this across the board over the next 3 years. So that's been built into the rates over the last couple of years. So we have the funds available to proceed with this project. The RFQ that we're anticipating putting out, the amount of services for the RFQ is anticipated to be $1.5 million over 3 years. And then the other $1.5 million that we've budgeted for, part of that is for the purchase of the software. Some of that is for the work that's previously been done for the PLCs, et cetera. And then some of that is we will need some construction management services as the integrator comes on, so that somebody's looking at what they're doing and making sure we're managing that consultant, as well as some support from Jeff Adler as AVAC's representative to help as we go through that process of doing the preliminary design and the detailed design and ultimately rolling that out. So to answer your question, that was kind of lengthy, but $3 million over 3 years is what we're anticipating and what's been built into the rates for this.
And then after that, the year after that.
After that, the maintenance contract for the software package is $15,000 per year, roughly. So that's what we'll be looking at going forward. And then as needed support probably from the integrators, similar to what we have right now with Jeff Adler.
On that 3 million, it was built into the rate. I do not remember hearing that specifically. I don't know if it was done.
Yeah, in the every year when we go through the financial plan that gives recommendations for the annual rate adjustment, we include a 5-year capital plan, and this project is included in that 5-year capital plan within the rate study.
Yeah. I do not remember a specific discussion, on that. Maybe there was, but I don't remember.
Yeah, we'll be sure to highlight that when we go through the rate study here over the next month or so.
Because usually it's done by the committee and there's a recommendation.
Correct.
Anyway, the whole board needs to be aware of that. In all of these, I think this presentation is very good and probably all needs to be done, but somebody's got to pay these, rates right there. And they're all good, but I'd like to equate it to how much per acre foot it's going to increase. So we just got to be careful.
Yeah.
A lot of things we're doing, some things need to be done. Some things maybe they can be put off a little bit. And this probably something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
But we just got to be careful.
Yep.
Mr. President, again, the consensus of the committee was approval of this, so I will move approval of Board Order 8B2.
Motion by Dr. Paris.
Director Miller, second.
Dr. Miller, we have a second. Is there any further discussion or questions from the board? Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried.
All right. Good job, Justin.
Thank you for your time.
Yep. Thank you very much. Outstanding job.
Matt, when these proposals, we need to put in there, this is easy. You can figure it real fast, but how much per acre foot, that's going to increase our rates, right?
Yeah. I mean, this, like Justin said, this is a long-term project. We're going to have the estimated 3 million over the next few years, but our hope is that this project lasts 20, 30, 40 years. So, but yeah, we can do an analysis like that over the lifetime of the life expectancy of the project and relate that to per acre foot.
Yeah, well, that's fine, but we need to do it over 3 years because we're not paying it over the life expectancy. We're paying it in 3 years.
Yeah.
Or we're maybe paying it sooner than that.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we're moving on. Item number C, Water Master Committee. And Rob, are you going to do that or is
Actually, Matt will go ahead and do that.
Yeah, Matt.
Mr. President.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you. So, included in your packet on page 126 is a staff report, and attached to the staff report is the agenda for tomorrow's Water Master meeting. As you know, Director Paris is the primary representative for AVAC on the Water Master Board, and I serve as the alternate. So this is an opportunity to go through the agenda for tomorrow and for the AVAC board to give direction, if any, to our representatives during the Water Master meeting tomorrow. So, few items that are up for consideration. We have a consideration and possible action on approving an amendment to the Water Master's rules and regulations, placing limitation on new production. We've gone through this before, but this is a recommendation from the advisory committee and various board members to amend the rules and regs that gives the Water Master some authority that if there is not sufficient imported water supplies to meet the new production applications being approved, there's some flexibility with the Water Master and the Water Master engineer to do that. So on page 126, you can see the proposed language, pretty straightforward. Like I say, it gives some wiggle room for the Water Master if in the event there's not sufficient imported water to replace the new production quantities being pumped. Second item is also an amendment to the rules and regulations regarding repayment of delinquent replacement water assessments. So as you know now, each year the Water Master sets a replacement water assessment rate. If somebody pumps over their production right number, or any new production applications have to pay a replacement water assessment. And we found that we have numerous delinquent replacement water assessments that go on for several years. So this amendment requires that the delinquent replacement water assessments, they have to pay the then current replacement water assessment fee. So for example, if somebody pumped water 5 years ago, they wouldn't pay the replacement water fee that was in place 5 years ago. If they are delinquent for 5 years, they would pay the current rate to do that. And this keeps the Water Master whole and AVAC as a supplier of imported water for replacement water whole financially, because once they pay, that's when AVAC supplies the replacement water to the valley and to the Water Master. So this is a good thing for both the Water Master and AVAC as a supplier of replacement water.
What is that replacement water?
Currently, it's $523 per acre foot. Yeah. So those two amendments are being recommended by the advisory committee, and those should go through tomorrow. We're going to have a public hearing and formal approval of those. The next item is an amendment to Hallmark Group, who, as you know, is serving as the administrator for the Water Master. This is an amendment for about $18,000 for them to do a financial study regarding the assessment rates for the Water Master. Voted no against this proposed amendment. They want to explore other options on determining what the assessments need to be, and they threw out a number of options that the board needs to consider. So I think we go along tomorrow with the advisory committee's recommendations, and the board should engage in some discussion on what those other options are before we vote. So
that sounds reasonable. I mean, my God, since day one, they've been wanting an increase.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, it's Frank. Is this part of this thing where you guys went out, not you guys, the Water Master went out and asked for assistance from the advisory, and they came in with a higher rate on the per acre foot? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, it's we all know the Water Master is struggling financially, with what we're seeing in the increased legal expenses and the increased costs with the Hallmark Group as the administrator. There's just not enough revenue being brought in under the $5 per acre foot assessment rate. So Hallmark Group is recommending to do a study to determine what the assessment rates need to be increased by to make the Water Master whole financially. So they want about $18,000 to do that study. And the advisory committee is simply saying, rather than spend that $18,000, let's just work collectively and come up with some alternatives that won't cost anything for the water master.
Well,
Does that answer your question?
wait, but they're not using AVAC for that.
No, we're not. No, AVAC is not involved at all.
Okay, okay. I wanted to make that, yeah, because that statement that's been relayed on to you doesn't make any sense at all. There has somebody out there who's a professional firm that does these, like we hired Rapatellis, to give us, a 3-year, 5-year projection of, what the overhead cost is going to be with today's inflated rates, So what are they going to do? Pull it out of the air?
Yeah, I think that's what's going to be talked about, Frank, is coming up with different alternatives, and maybe at end of the day they need to hire a financial expert to give prepare a financial plan for the water master. But the group is just saying that they don't feel that spending $18,000 for Hallmark is the right use of those funds.
Matt,
I think what they're finding out is it ain't the 18,000, it's Hallmark. They make a decision.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think the issue is. They tell them one story when they get appointed, to the water master team, and then also all these additional expenses. I mean, they're worse than change orders. So I mean, that's exactly what's going on here. But anyway, I was just curious. That's what that's about. Okay.
But you don't need a professional study. I mean, you need a pro forma, you need a budget.
Yeah.
And that can be done by anybody with a little financial, background.
Yeah, the finances for the water master are pretty straightforward. There's only one source of revenues, and the expenses are pretty fixed.
Exactly.
Right. So,
and the other thing is, when Hallmark came on board, guys, it wasn't but a month before they were raising rates already. I believe they signed in for a year. Didn't they sign for a year?
Yeah.
Before we moved anything, and a month later they're raising rates already.
Well, this 18,000, that's not what they need. This is just a study.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
exactly
ridiculous.
And the other thing is, they had to know these lawsuits were on the books. I mean, this was water that was pumped in the valley pending from years ago. So all they had to do is look at what they were up for. Now all of a sudden they're trying to come after the landowners to increase the assessments.
Yeah.
If nobody says no, nobody doesn't question it, it's going to go on.
Well, the advisory board said no.
Yeah, the advisory board said no, and your two reps this evening, I think, are hearing your comments loud and clear. So I think we both have direction. So.
Like I said, it's a change order.
Yeah. Pretty much. So moving on, the next set of items are related to various transfers and applications. I'm going to skip item A regarding the High Desert Dairy, but we'll first talk about the other transfers. Stephen Godey to West Valley County Water, 50 acre feet of temporary one-time transfer. The advisory committee is recommending approval of that. LA County or Los Angeles Department of Water Power, they have a new substation going in near Roseman, and they need to provide some fire protection for that substation, electrical substation. So they're requesting 1 acre foot per year of new production to fill on-site storage tank.
Okay, I'm confused. You say the Department of Water and Power?
Yes.
Do they have water rights?
They don't have water rights. LA World Airports is the water right holder for City of LA.
You mean their sister company? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think this is a good thing that they're applying for new production and not permanent production right from the city. So
thank you.
And then there's a new point of extraction being submitted by Gene Wheeler Farms, who does some onion farming here in the valley. And this also is being recommended for approval by the advisory committee. Now, at this time, I'll ask Directors Harris and Van Dam to maybe step out while we talk about the High Desert Dairy Craig Van Dam transfer?
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, I'm stepping out of this and will at the Water Master Board because I have a conflict. I think Gary feels the same way.
Yeah, so have a conflict.
Yeah, great. Thank you, guys. All right, so those two gentlemen have stepped out. So a little bit of background. We've seen this on the Water Master agenda for a number of months now, and each time it gets tabled due to last minute letters or comments by the parties involved. Sounds like there's a family dispute between members of the High Desert Dairy and the one receiving the transfer being recommended tomorrow. It's 500 acre feet per year of permanent transfer from the High Desert Dairy to Craig Van Dam. And as you heard, Director Paris is going to recuse himself tomorrow on this item from the Water Master agenda. And me being the alternate, I want to make sure I have clear direction from the AVAC board going into this item, being that we have a board member that is involved. So,
I would think, hopefully the board would agree, but as long as this is still going on, it should be tabled. Whether if it's still going through court of law, I don't know, but it should be tabled.
Yeah.
Until the resolution.
You want me to speak to this, Matt?
Yeah, you want to give a little more background.
Let me jump in before you do that, Jim. I agree with George. It's not our matter. It's the Hatfields against the McCoys. It's just, it's they got to work this thing out, and AVAC has nothing to do with it, except we have representation on the Water Master Board. So I think they should table it further until they get this thing worked out.
Well, I couldn't agree more. For full disclosure's purposes, this was a hassle going on. It's part of a lot of stuff going on between the two brothers, Gary and his brother Craig, and it involves a lot of things. I was helping Gary with this, did a little legal work for him, trying to mediate it, and you all know who the mediator was because that's why Rob can't participate. We didn't resolve anything. And I'm not here to advocate for Gary's side of how this could turn out, but basically this involves dispositions under the family trust for water rights that were awarded to the Van Dam family a long time ago. I've talked to Craig Parton about this, and to be honest with you, I'm going to tell the board quite honestly, I don't understand why he doesn't just say to the board exactly what George and Frank just said. That board was not created to resolve civil disputes over who owns water rights. And that's what you have here. It has to be adjudicated somewhere in a court of competent jurisdiction. So that's the number one question. I don't know why the Water Masters Council is advising the Water Master Board. This is even something that the board should consider, or even the court in this proceeding. It's a civil dispute over who owns the water right in the first place. Secondly, we have a strange rule with this Water Master where you have to have a unanimous vote on everything. And this particular situation, we can understand Rob abstaining. Now think about Matt. I would tell Matt right here that the board ought to give Matt instructions to abstain, both to back up what the board said, let it be civilly resolved, and also who could imagine a representative who's the alternate to this board deciding something where one of his 5 bosses has one of the key financial interests. You couldn't ask somebody to do that. It would be so inappropriate for Matt to try to make a decision on the merits of this, just totally inappropriate. So I think the real problem here, if they want to do this, they're either going to do it in court, as both George and Frank have indicated, and that's where it belongs. Or if the Water Master is going to act on it, they're going to have to enact a new rule that says where you have a hopeless it's hopeless you'll never get all board members on the water master to even vote on it, let alone decide it, that they have another way they can go to break that, to break away from the unanimous rule, unanimous approval rule, if they want to do that. So I'm concurring with everything Frank said, George said, and then some. And I think the board might be helping Matt by instructing Matt to abstain on it so that it remains off the water master calendar and gets resolved the right way.
I agree. Jim, I agree with you. I agree. Everything is said. It's not in our court. It's not our decision making. That's right. An outside situation. And the water master should do the same thing. Tell them, you go settle out there in civil, and then come back to us and tell us who's got what.
Right.
It's not our battle at this point, and so I don't know if we need a motion or just a consensus of the board, but
yeah, okay. I make a motion that tomorrow when Matt. What?
What did you say?
I was going to make a motion that when.
Okay, we have enough. Yeah. Okay, there's four of us, but
yeah.
Okay.
There's a four. Yeah. Go ahead, Frank.
I was going to make a motion that Matt tomorrow when he sits in as the reserve alternate that he abstains on Avek's behalf.
Abstain or table the motion?
No, abstain.
Well, either one says he can't vote yes or no.
Okay.
You can't vote. You can't vote. You got a 5-member board.
I don't know if
so this is Matt. So let me chime in here. So, I think we're saying the same thing, but if it came, what if two of the other water master board members make a motion and a second to approve it, and it goes forward for a vote? At that point, I need to abstain from the vote.
That's
but
right.
If the board's comfortable with it, I can recommend early in the discussion that this item be tabled.
Would that be considered a yes vote?
That's I'm not vote a no, just not voting. It's not a yes, not a no.
It has to be unanimous. If you abstain,
then it'll fail.
Okay, you sure of that?
Yes.
Is that Jim?
That's correct. If somebody votes to approve, then at that point Matt has to abstain.
I want.
What does he have to abstain?
Because he would, even if he votes no on the motion, he'd be making it would look like he made a decision on the merits to protect Gary, which is so inappropriate to put him in that position.
Well, I don't know if that would be the case when we're done. We're just going to stand up for something.
George, the way that George, the judgment says it takes the majority of all 5 have to agree on it. If there's only 4 members that ever show up at a meeting, they can't take action on anything.
It's a very odd rule, George. They put it on themselves. All the votes have to be unanimous. So I prefer to advise Matt not to vote on the merits. So if somebody says approve or disapprove, I think he should abstain either way, and just get it off the water master calendar. It doesn't belong.
If that's the effect it's going to have, it wouldn't pass. But what about table the motion?
That I think that's a good motion for Matt to support. If that's the motion, yes.
What I'm hearing is the first preferred path is for me to recommend tabling the item. If for some reason that's not successful and it goes to a vote, then I need to abstain.
Right.
Perfect.
That's got to be adjudicated in wherever it stands by the court or in pushing of one another. But we're not ready to make a vote. The water master.
No, that's right.
Hey, Jim, would abstaining be the same as recusing myself?
No. Yes. I mean, it is.
It is essentially.
It's exactly what it is. If you can't recuse yourself from voting for or against your boss on an item of a value of 500 acre-feet of water rights, I can't imagine what you could abstain on. Yeah. I mean, it's just wrong to put you in that position.
Well, but Jim, it's not one boss, it's 2, because you have one who is a mediator, which basically it puts him in that as either for or against Rob. So I like you said, ask to table it, and if they don't like that, abstain.
No, I completely agree with that. That's what I think you should tell them to do.
Matt, did you say excuse yourself?
Yeah, I was asking if recusing myself is the same as abstaining.
I wouldn't think so, because all of a sudden you'd have the majority of the people that are there.
Excuse yourself what, for the meeting?
But they still need 5 votes.
Well, if you're not there, maybe you can take 4, huh? Are you
Yeah, that means
sure?
they can't have a meeting.
Yeah, so you're going to be there, Matt. When you recuse on this one item, you're doing exactly what Rob's doing, which is what you should do.
Okay.
You say
Recuse himself means he's abstaining, leaves the room. If there's a vote on the merits, if they just say table it, I have no problem with him agreeing to table it.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, suggest that?
Yeah, I feel comfortable with that question. Yeah.
Yes, he can. But I think the problem is, I just don't know. And I've talked to Craig Parton, and listen, he's a good lawyer. I don't want to push the water master's lawyer too hard because we have a lot of business in front of him, but I don't understand why he's letting this board even think about making this decision.
Okay, so we could be here all night debating that. So what are we going to do?
I think you got the direction, right, Matt?
Yeah, I'll just repeat it. My direction tomorrow as a representative for the AVAC board seat is to first request to table this item. If for some reason it doesn't get tabled and it gets forced to a vote, then I am going to recuse myself from that vote.
Right.
Good. Okay. I'm okay. So I amend my motion to my motion is to approve your what is
those directions? Yeah, approve the directions.
Table the motion or recluse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that right, Frank?
Yes. Table. The table's the first thing he's going to do.
Exactly.
Yep.
Then excuse himself. In that order.
If he can get the first motion in, yes. He's the first one to move the table.
Motion by Director Donato, second by Director Miller.
Right.
Is the discussion? Madam Secretary?
Okay, so Gary is recused. Audrey Miller?
Yes.
Robert Paris is also recused. Keith Dias?
Yes.
Frank Donato?
Yes.
George Lane?
Yes. Motion carried.
Oh, I just... Very good.
Give a little bit more than this is your finish.
That's all I have on this item.
Yes, Mr. President, we're done.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item number D. It's regarding a resolution for past director shall be responsible for public service, Division 1. And it's a board order.
This director not all move on board order 8D1. Consider a possible action on resolution R-23, 17, honoring Shelley Sussball for her public service as a director in Division 1 to the agency board of directors.
I'll second the motion. This is Keith.
Give that to Keith.
Keith? Was that a second?
Yes.
Okay.
I tried to.
Okay.
You win, Keith.
Okay. We have a motion in a second. And there's no further discussion, so.
Wait. I'd like to make a comment. I know she's not on line, but I would like to say that she did a heck of a job She was very loyal to the agency and put in a lot of time, and I wish her the best in whatever endeavors she does.
And we would like to present it to her in person if it works out. If not, it'll be forwarded to her.
Yes.
We have a motion second, Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Okay, that'll bring us down to item number 9, General Manager's Report. And Matt, back to you.
Yes, thank you. So we have a brief report this evening. I'm sorry, I'm thrown off here. So Justin's going to first give an update on a request for water service from a company called Pacific Steel Group out in the Mojave area of Mojave region. So take it away, Justin.
All right, great. Thank you. And hello again. So the agency received, I believe the Water Projects Committee reviewed this item previously for an update, but we wanted to make sure that the full board was aware of this. So we have received an application for water service from the Pacific Steel Group. I'll reference them as PSG throughout the presentation, to supply water to a proposed steel mill off of Avek's central feeder system south of Mojave. So this is kind of right along, I've got a map, but it's right along Sierra Highway between Roseman and Mojave. It is outside of the Mojave PUD and Roseman CSD's service areas. They're requesting up to almost 1,300 acre feet per year once they're built out, and up to about 1,000 GPM or 2.2 CFS. In accordance with our rules and regulations, they have submitted their application with a $3,000 deposit, which is AVEC's policy to kind of kick off a process of any type of review of, their proposed connection or potential connection, so that we have some funds on hand to reimburse ourselves for any AVEC staff time associated with working with these folks. So here's the photo of the location. So our Roseman City or Community Roseman's here. Our Roseman water treatment plant is located right there. And then we have our central feeder system, which goes out to the east and then kind of runs along Sierra Highway to the north up towards Mojave. So it's a 36-inch line. Their proposed connection is right here at Sierra Highway and Sop Road. So Dawn Road is about the northern boundary for Roseman CSD, and they don't quite make it to Mojave. So that's the location of their proposed site. I did a little bit of looking through their website, found an interesting rendering of what this facility might look like. I overlaid, again, AVEC's 36-inch line running along Sierra Highway here that they proposed to connect to. The railroad tracks are here. We've made it clear to them in our early discussions that they would be required to connect to AVEC and build any kind of service vault on the west side of those tracks. So any connection to their facility or issues with right-of-way acquisition or anything to do with the railroad would fall on the responsibility of the Pacific Steel Group. And I realize this is going to be difficult to see, I guess, here in the boardroom, but I took just a blurb from their website that's overlaid on the top of this photo here. It says to be constructed at a net investment of approximately $350 million. The new micromill is expected to begin commissioning in early 2025, employing roughly 400 people and achieving an estimated nominal annual capacity of 380,000 tons of steel. So what they're looking to do here is a steel mill to produce rebar from scrap metal. You can see their facility here, the rendering. There's a solar facility that they plan on building to support their process. They're tagging themselves as a green steel mill, but they're producing the rebar from scrap metal. They have a business already. They're one of the largest reinforcing steel contractors in the U.S., about $600 million in annual revenue. and they were founded in 2014. So they're currently just installing the rebar, and so they'd like to take this process from production of the rebar then installation. So they're kind of bringing that whole operation in house. They've started their environmental process. They produced a draft environmental impact report, which was out for public comment. That period is closed, and they're currently working on reviewing and responding to those comments into a final document. That's kind of about it. Just wanted to make the board aware of this application for service, and the next steps for this process would be Pacific Steel Group is planning to design their proposed connection, and then AVAC staff, starting work off of that $3,000 deposit, would review and comment on those plans to make sure that everything is up to AVAC's design standards. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Is there anything built there right now? Is it just a bare piece of property?
Yeah, it's an empty piece of land. Yeah, this is all vacant. This is all on the this would be the southeast corner of SOP and Sierra Highway, and this is just vacant land right now.
Okay, where's Dawn Road
at? So here's their location. I think, gosh, it's hard to see. I think this is Dawn Road though, right here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How many acres is it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't remember. I want to say like 80 or 100 acres. Between that, there's two parcels that they have right there. I think it's about that amount.
Okay, and they've already acquired the property.
Yeah, they own
so
the land.
Going on. They're going to be built by 2025.
That's what their website's saying. They want to be going by 2025.
Interesting.
They still have some environmental work to do, so I don't, who knows, but.
All right.
And I think you had told us in committee that was just west of that polar field we looked at.
Oh yeah, I think, is that the Sanborn facility? That might be this. Oh, gosh, this won't go. But it might be this one here. This might be that Sanborn facility. Is that the right vicinity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in the vicinity, the Edwards Air Force Base.
Right.
Sanborn solar facility. Yeah.
So that's already there, and then their project.
Thank you.
So, okay. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Well, I have just a few more slides, just a general GM report. Did you have a question, Director Paris?
Just we'd be providing them treated water at that site at a treated water cost?
Yeah. It'd be the M&I rate, which is currently $6.99 per acre foot.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
$6.99.
Yeah. So back to the GM report. We've all seen this Northern Sierra A Station Index for the water year that began in October. We had a great December, January, and then a really good March. You can see May we're creeping up on the average of 2.8 inches for the month. Right now we're at 1.7. This shows that same information in different graphical forms. So we're currently total cumulative about 62.7 inches. You can see the long-term average is about 53 inches. So we're about 124% of average. You can see the other recent dry years are well below that average, but this year's the great whiplash or comeback. So our state water project allocation, as you know, is currently at 100%, which means about 145,000 acre feet of Table A state water project supply for AVAC. The last time we saw a 100% allocation was back in 2006. So it's been a number of years. We continue to receive Article 21. About 2,000 acre feet per week is what we're putting our request in and taking close to that amount between our direct deliveries through our water treatment plants and the water that we're banking in the groundwater basin here locally. So we're estimating it for this year be about 22,000 acre feet of Article 21, and that's in addition to the 145,000 acre feet for Table A that AVAC will have. I think Peter Thompson reviewed this with the board at the last meeting, but that surplus number begins to grow or continues to grow as we take more and more Article 21 water. So just to hit the highlights on this, our direct deliveries through our various plants, about 38,000 acre feet. Recharge up to 60,000 acre feet between all the facilities. We have a little bit in transfers that we have obligation for. We plan to target at least 20,000 acre feet in San Luis as carryover going into 2024 as a little reserve for the agency. But that still leaves between 44,000 and 49,000 acre feet of surplus that we currently don't have a home for. So Peter and I are talking to various groups and finding out where this water could be either sold or stored on AVAC's behalf, or do a transfer of Table A for some local groundwater supplies that could be transferred to AVAC. So we're still working through those details. Hope to soon bring that forward to a committee and then onto the board before any final recommendations are made. So stay tuned for that. And you may have heard about the Kern River intertie. As you know, Lake Isabella and the runoff that flows into the Kern River is at all-time high. So there is a facility that interties Kern River water to the State Water Project or California Aqueduct. So we were notified about a week ago from DWR that they were going to utilize this facility to take some relief off of the Kern River to prevent some flooding associated with that high volume of runoff. So they started using that facility. They're redirecting flows from the Kern River into the State Water Project between 500 and 1,500 CFS. And they estimate up to 75,000 acre feet of water will be redirected into the California Aqueduct. They notify all the contractors downstream of that, like AVAC, because it could have an impact on the water quality that's coming from the Kern River runoff. pH is a little bit different. The turbidity is typically a little bit higher. So we're keeping a close eye on that. So far, the water quality through the AVAC plants remains unaffected from the Kern River flow. So we wanted to share that with the board in case you heard anything about it. But we are keeping a close eye on primarily the water quality coming through the State Water Project.
Matt, how's that water distributed? Does that become Article 21 water? Or?
It just becomes part of the State Water Project supply. So they'll increase pumping from the Kern River into the California Aqueduct, and then they back off on the pumping into the State Water Project. So it's just substituting State Water Project supply. And it right now it does become Article 21 within the State Water Project supply.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I got some good news here. You probably remember that resolution the board approved a couple meetings ago regarding some funding offered through the Fremont Basin IRWM implementation grant offered through DWR. We applied for $625,000 through this program because we didn't want that to go to waste. And we got notice last week that we were awarded that grant amount. So the agency received $625,000, and this will go towards reconstructing the Mojave Pump Station, what we call the North Region Pump Station Project. And kudos to the whole team, but primarily Pam Clark. She kind of took the lead on this, scrambled, put together the grant application, and worked closely with DWR. She had a lot of support from the operations staff, John's group, to give her the details and the technical aspects, but kudos to the whole team. And The good thing with this program is there's no match funds required, so it's 100% grant to Avek.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job, Pam.
Hooray.
And as mentioned, we have the Water Master meeting tomorrow here at AVAC at 10 a.m., also via Zoom if you want to dial into that. And then next Monday, the 29th, is agency holiday, so we'll be closed that day. So, and that's all I have to report unless you have any questions.
Is that Tulare Lake still flooding? They said there's a bunch of dairy farms that are evacuating cattle still.
Yeah, it's pretty full. I was watching some videos on that over the weekend. And
Right. They said up to a year.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I heard. Yeah, there's going to be standing water for some time out there. And that's part of this this pump in program from the Kern River to the aqueduct is help alleviate some flooding near Tulare Lake.
Wow. Amazing.
Pretty crazy.
Is that it?
That's all I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Matt. If there's no further questions from our general manager, we'll move on to item number 10, need director's reports. If not, we'll move on to item number 11, attorney's reports.
No reports from me, George.
That's always good news.
Yes.
Okay, request for future agenda items. Okay, we'll move on to item number 13, closed session. My understanding, we have a need to go into closed session.
We do for items A and B.
Okay, so a motion would be in order to go into closed session.
Director Miller, I so move.
Mr. President, I second that motion.
Dr. Miller, Dr. Paris. Okay, Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller, Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Okay, we're closed session. Take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.